Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great gurus, thank you for being with us tonight, waiting for us, loving us. Help us quiet our minds and open our hearts so we can enter into a deep devotional communion with you. Now and in every moment of our lives. Om, peace. Amen. Perfect timing. Okay, so, well, the topic is walking meditation, but the real topic tonight is loving God. And just using the technique, I'll call it, love breathing. Really, the best title is a love breathing devotional walk. And to just use that as a technique to practice loving God, to practice devotion, and practice God remembrance. So before we start, I will ask a question. I mean, you don't have to answer out loud, but just, inwardly, think about the answer to this question. How do you practice loving God on a daily basis? And why don't you sit with a minute and just really think, on a daily basis, how do you practice loving God? Okay, does everyone have now, hopefully you have a simple, obvious answer to that question. If you don't, get one. That's a really important thing to do on the spiritual path. I was on the spiritual path, I've been on the spiritual path, on this path at Ananda now for almost 30 years. And for the first 16 years on this path, I did not practice loving God. I did not practice devotion. And I suffered for it greatly. That first 16 years, I just felt like I was kind of drowning in the ocean, and every now and then I could come up for air and get a gasp of breath, but then I would sink again. And it was very interesting because I was, we have these great teachings, and we have these great meditation techniques that have all been taught to us, progressive meditation techniques, very detailed, that take us, from the beginning to, samadhi, ultimately. But then Yogananda said, meditation needs devotion, devotion needs meditation. But there isn't this great course of how to practice devotion. We know how to practice meditation, but Yogananda said also that everyone must find their own way to make love to God. And so it's kind of left up to us as to how are we going to make love to God. And we have chanting, that's one way. And that's one way that Swami Kriyananda used early on when he was with Master. Master told him he needed devotion, so he would spend hours chanting every day. I know in my own life I tried that, and it didn't really work for me. It was something that wasn't going to get me there. So for the first 16 years, I could see many people at Ananda that had great light in their eyes, and just a tingling joy in their aura, And I knew it was there and it was possible, but I didn't have it, and it was so frustrating. And I was trying, practicing the presence of God, God remembrance, keeping my consciousness at the spiritual eye, like I would take many walks, just keeping my consciousness at the spiritual eye and chanting God as a japa while I did that. And I would fail at it because I'd always forget God, and then I'd just get more and more frustrated. Until finally, I think, the deep yearning, Master had pity on me. And I had this experience where I was taking a walk and I was feeling deeply desolate, thinking, nothing's working here. I want something to work. I quit my job a year earlier. I call it my year of desolation after that, the year that I quit my job. And this was in 2008 I quit. And so in 2009 I was taking this walk. And I felt Master come into my right ear in a flash of golden light and just shout at me and commanded me, love God. God wants your love. God needs your love. Love Him. And I realized, I've been meditating, practicing seva, but I haven't, and I thought I had devotion, but really devotion was just a concept in my mind. It wasn't a practice of my heart. And this happened to me while I was taking a walk, so I thought, okay, I've got to figure out a way to practice loving God while walking. And that's what I did. And I've been doing that now for over 12 years. And so I'm going to share with you kind of the way that I practice loving God, and it can be useful to you, but everyone does need to find their own way, and so they can maybe use some of these things or not. But I'll also talk about some concepts too, about what are some of the obstacles to loving God, and what can we do to overcome those obstacles. And those are going to be very generic, and so let me see, what did I write in my thing here to prompt me? I can say, okay, yeah, so the obstacles was next. So what are some of the obstacles to, oh no, actually I don't want to do that next, hold on. I want to do this next. Yeah, oh, don't read that. I want to, this is, I want to read because this kind of sets the stage for what we're doing, but I want to read a letter that Swami Kriyananda wrote to his fellow disciples back in 1957, Christmas of 1957. And this is Swami Kriyananda writing to other fellow disciples. I knew Master 3.5 years. That is not long, but it was long enough to hear a considerable number of his priceless discourses. Many hours he would talk with the monks on various philosophical points and on matters pertaining to the work. Often, too, when we were alone, he would discuss these issues with me personally. And if there is one point that stands out in my throng of sweet memories, it is the fact that what pleased him always above everything else was devotion and a constant inward remembrance of God. Would it not be wonderful if more of us were on fire with love for God? How many weep for the Divine Mother as Master wept when he was a boy? Our greatest work in life should be to express that divine yearning, that love. To think of God and to love Him is our first job in life. So, what are the obstacles to that first job in life? There's probably many ways you could describe the obstacles. I'm going to describe it in 2 ways, and go over those. So self-criticism is a big one. And also fear of facing the emptiness of our own ego. Swamiji wrote this wonderful song that we sing every Sunday during the Festival of Light, You Remain Our Friend. It goes, long we feared to face your love, lest our emptiness it prove. Now at last, our hearts we give you, who remain our friend. That, to me, that's the most thrilling part of the Festival of Light, because that just really encapsulates the whole spiritual journey right there. When we face God, when we face unity, we have to accept that our egos are nothing. And that can be a terribly frightening experience. It can be a terribly lonely experience. And feeling that loneliness can be very painful. And so that can make us run away from the experience of facing God. And so how do we deal with that? Okay, so let's talk about number one, though. First, self-criticism. I'm going to talk about some, suggested techniques about dealing with both of those obstacles. But what happens if you're trying to practice devotional God remembrance every moment of the day? You're going to fail many times throughout the day. Failure will be your constant companion. So the question to ask is, what happens when you remember God? You've forgotten him and you remember him. What happens? That's the critical moment, the moment of remembrance. That right there, if you could just capture that moment and deal with it appropriately, everything else falls into place. When I was practicing taking walks and just keeping my consciousness at the spiritual eye point and chanting God, and I would forget God, but then when I come back and remember him again, I would get really angry at myself. And a lot of self-criticism would come in. Why can't I do this? Darn it all, I quit my job in order just to do this, and I'm failing at it. And I failed over and over and over and over again. And so these walks became very unpleasant because I was just beating myself up over it. And that, can happen throughout that can happen in your whole sadhana, whether it's meditation, whatever. Whenever you're not living up to your own spiritual aspirations, what happens? Do you beat yourself up? Do you get angry at yourself? Do you feel despondent? Because that's a spiral down. That's going down the spiral staircase, that type of response. Because what happens is, what happened for me is, and over the course of this year, I was trying this. I remember it. I'm going to speak just from my own experience, but it was so painful to remember God after a while that I started to forget him. It's your monkey mind comes in, your subconscious mind comes in and says, okay, remembering God is really painful because you get whipped on the back whenever that happens because you're upset because you've forgotten him. And so you actually condition yourself to forget God more and more and more so you don't feel the pain of self-criticism. And so it's really important to flip that around and say, okay, I'm going to try to remember God, but at the moment I remember him, it's got to become a joyful experience so that you'll remember him more and more and more. And God loves us. He's overjoyed whenever we remember him. We may feel like we're upset that we forgot him, but he's out there celebrating that we've remembered him. For just one breath out of the whole day, God celebrates and smiles. And so what we want to do is train ourselves to share in that celebration. And so every time, so now that my practice then became is every time I remembered God, I would affirm and I would try to feel into God's joy and happiness and gratitude at my remembering him. It takes a lot of spiritual courage to feel that God is grateful to us for our love for him. But he is. And you can practice that on a moment-by-moment basis. So let's do it. I got ahead of myself here, but let's do an exercise now. Okay, there we go. Why don't you face that direction in your chairs? Just for now, you can just turn the chairs around and turn them back. Okay, so what we're going to do, it's a love breathing exercise. And what I want you to do is, first of all, sit up straight like in a meditation pose, chest, shoulders back a little bit, chest puffed up a little bit so that your heart is open. And I want you to pick either the left or the right side and stare. This is with your eyes open, no closing eyes in this, okay? I know we're all meditators here and we just want to close our eyes, but keep them open. That's important. And pick one of the blank sides of on the wall up there, either left or right, and just stare at a blank spot. Now, forgive me, Master, but don't stare at Master's picture up there. We'll do another exercise where we stare at the Master's pictures. But pick a blank spot, and then as you breathe in, feel like God is filling your heart with love. And as you breathe out, feel like you are sending God love, or you're loving God from the spiritual eye point. So as you breathe in, your heart chakra will be energized with God's love. And as you breathe out, the spiritual eye will become energized with love you are giving to God. And we're going to do this for 5 minutes. Now, this is meant to be hard. The fact that we just went through a Sri Teshwar meditation means you're probably already in the spiritual zone, so this might be easy. But it's really meant to, if you do this from a state of being in worldly distraction, it can be very hard, frustrating, and almost impossible. And that's what I was kind of hoping it would be. But anyway, because it'll make the rest of the class more relevant. But pick your side and go. And I may just walk around just to distract you too, so. No closing your eyes. Okay, let's turn around and back into a circle here. So, I was going to ask, so were you guys able to do that?
Well, I do it.
Oh, okay.
In my morning meditation, anyway. Actually, not walking, but in my meditation.
So every breath, were you able to do that without being?
Yes, but I did notice I was criticizing myself because I was wondering, am I doing this remotely or am I feeling it?
Oh, okay.
Heart,
All right.
And so there was an element of critique going on.
Okay. How was that for other people? Was that easy or hard or just kind of bland?
It was pretty easy.
Okay.
Like on the joke I did self-criticize. I thought, first thought I thought was, am I cheating because I see an imaginary cross on the wall? Or shadows there?
Okay.
Like, is there shadows over there?
Right.
So I thought that, and then it quickly went, and then it was easy. And then again, something else came into my mind, and I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking, I should have my journal with me so I can write this down. So, and then I came back to practice.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else want to share their experience or what that was?
Yeah, it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be.
Mm.
It was basically knowing that, and to me, whenever I think of God, I think of the Guru.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah.
immediately,
God or Guru.
the
Yeah.
Guru's
Yeah.
love, and he loves you. So
Yeah. Okay.
so it
Great.
was, there was some distraction somewhere, but he comes back.
Okay. All right. Jeffrey, was that something? How did you? I'm gonna put you on the spot. Sorry.
It wasn't as easy as it sounded. So, I mean, it was off and on.
Off and on. Okay. Yeah. Great.
I felt like I wanted to just go into meditation.
Yeah.
Easier.
Right. Yeah. Meditation. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. If it's interesting. I talked to Biraj once about what I was doing and how self-criticism has been a big part of my life. For the first 48 years or whatever. And he just kind of looked at me like blankly and he said, "Oh, I've never had that problem." And I was like, "Whoa!" I was like, that was just incomprehensible to me. So that someone could go through life without that problem. But anyway, so maybe if you guys don't have that problem, then that's not a problem. But so what's a really nice practice is a 30-minute walking and love breathing. Just to get over that is a 30-minute walk where you just go and you practice love breathing, but every time you come back to it, every time you forget God and come back to God, you affirm, you feel in God's gratitude, God's love. It could be the Guru or God, whichever makes sense for you. Every time you remember Him, and make joyful God remembrance an ongoing practice. Make it throughout the whole day. Whenever you remember God, spend 2 or 3 breaths just affirming His celebration, His delight, His gratitude at you remembering Him. And that's really all you have to do in all of life. It's just whenever you remember God, just for a couple breaths, just affirm His overwhelming joy in you. And then you could forget Him again and don't worry about it. Because then what'll happen is over time, this becomes, remembering God then becomes a joy and not something to get upset with yourself because you've forgotten Him. It's like you want to, the monkey mind is really there to protect you from yourself. The monkey mind comes in to help, because when you're trying to, it's this thing where when you try to quiet the mind down and go into a devotional state, it's really, you have to really face the emptiness of your own ego when you do that. And that can be a scary thing. And a lot of times when any spiritual practice, when you start it, it can activate the monkey mind to try to get you away from that pain, that fear of the emptiness. Ananda Moyimai has a wonderful way to describe this. And she described it in terms of japa, in the practice of japa, where you repeat God's name. She said, starting japa is like pouring a pot of boiling water down a snake pit. All the snakes come writhing out immediately. And that's the monkey mind going berserk when you try to quiet the mind down and enter into God, because you have to face the emptiness of your own ego, the loneliness of your own creation of separation in that pain.
The ego just fights
And
us to not.
I wouldn't even use the word fight. The monkey mind is trying to protect you from that pain.
Oh, I see.
He's trying to protect you from that pain. So, oh, that's too painful. Go look over here.
Oh, okay.
You want some, facing that emptiness is too much for you to handle. Go have some ice cream, or think about, washing the dishes or something.
And this is kind of the whole path then.
Yeah. So, but if you can, this is where, if you practice joyful God remembrance, so that remembering God becomes, and that's why doing it over like a 30-minute walk is good, because you get lots of times to practice. If you want to establish any new habit, practice makes perfect. You want to do lots of repetitions. And so if you just dedicate like 30 minutes of your day to joyful God remembrance, you're going to forget him if you're not, if you just didn't have a nice meditation and sit in the temple, if you're out, in your house or something, and during a normal day, you'll probably end up forgetting him a lot in those 30 minutes, which is great, because that gives you many chances to remember him and to turn that remembrance into a joyful experience. And so it's like, when you do that, it's actually like giving the monkey mind a banana, a treat. And because then the monkey mind then says, rather than remembering God causing you to beat yourself up in the back, it's actually a treat. So the monkey mind will take remembering God and put it at the top of the chatter list. Your monkey mind has a chatter list. and it depends on, how much pain you're facing as to what he's going to use, and he'll kind of work up the list as need be. But if he's trying to get you away from pain, he'll start you thinking about this. Maybe you're attached to the political scene, and he'll start, you can start getting angry at some, one side or the other side, or some president or not, and just, but what you want to do is get loving God, thinking of God, up on that chatter list, high on the chatter. And so that can be, if you're starting to feel upset, let's just pull off this, remember God, here you go. And that way you can make the monkey mind your ally in this, to think about God. Okay, so, where to go from here? Okay, so, all right, so then the other, the fear, facing the fear of the emptiness. And it was interesting, Devi gave a talk once. Jyotish and Devi are the leaders of Ananda worldwide. And Devi gave a talk once at a Spiritual Renewal Week many years ago that really just stuck in my mind, and I'm really grateful she shared this about herself. But she said a very interesting thing. She said, I've made the most spiritual progress in my life when I've just been willing to sit with my loneliness. And I thought, wow, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I was really appreciated that she shared that too. Because that's, let's see how to, that's what I forgot to remember. Yeah, coaxing, okay. Because when we're doing any spiritual practice, it's usually, what's the motivation for it? It's to get away from pain and to get into joy. Is really the, you can just simplify it down to those, get away from pain and get into joy. So when we're in the pain of our own loneliness, or our own, facing the emptiness of our ego, you can think of it, the spiritual practice of being done on two sides of a spectrum, or two ends of a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you're trying to get away from your little ego bubble into God, because it's much nicer there. And on the other end of the spectrum, you could be practicing in a way that instead of trying to run away from the emptiness of your own ego to get into God, you sit in the emptiness and try to bring God in to fill it up. And there's actually two different, it may seem abstract, but it's actually, in terms of a practice, it does have some real practical implications. Because ultimately, we can run away from our own ego into God and feel God's love there, but we'll be sucked back into the ego sooner or later if we leave it there. And ultimately, we have to go into it and bring God into it to fill it up and dissolve it. Now, the way this manifested in my life, and we want to, there's a coaxing process, to get maybe from a state of distraction to a state of inner God communion. And because a lot of times going right into that emptiness is too much for us to bear, and we can't, because the ego will put up too much resistance. The monkey mind will come in and go berserk, and just too much, you can't handle it. Go think about your car or something. Do something else. You can't do it. So what we can do, though, is, because the monkey mind will give us thoughts to think about, and the problem is once new thoughts come in, then we forget about God. And I'm going to read this from, let's see, what time? Yeah, we got plenty of time. Okay. I'm going to read this. Suman sent me an email today. She saw about this class, and she just, I guess, I don't know if y'all know Suman. She used to live in the community here, but she had to move to Canada. She said, hi, Eric. Well, anyway, I wish I could be there. It's described so perfectly, monkey mind and loneliness. I think for me, it is that loneliness from God that causes my mind to be running, and busyness of life to combat that loneliness. Sometimes, so much resistance, even in meditation, because the monkey mind is constantly nibbling at me, just waiting to take a good bite of my consciousness. And once it gets a good hold, it is off and running. And I thought that was just such a sweet way to describe what happens many, many times, or constantly. And because once a monkey mind thought comes in, you're just kind of off and you forget. So what we want to be able to do is to bring God into our, face the emptiness and bring God into it, but in a way that doesn't bring up too much resistance from the monkey mind. And and so what we can do is, rather than let the monkey mind go off on thought trains, we can give it something to look at. And so this is where sometimes walking is a great way to do this, because when you're walking, but other things like knitting, washing the dishes, any type of activity is very useful for this that doesn't require a lot of thought, but just activity. Because when we're walking and, say, looking around, actually, I read something that, visual processing, actually, when you're looking around and stuff, that takes up about 60% of your mental computational capacity, which is really kind of interesting, because then what you can then do is you can use that if you're starting to feel like you're trying to quiet the mind down and you're feeling resistance from it, you just start looking around. And that then takes up a lot of your mental computational capacity, and then makes it a little easier to focus on loving God with the other 40% of your mental capacity that's there. And the same thing, with walking and moving, it uses up, it distracts you from that emptiness for a while. And then you can invite God in a little bit. But then once you have God inside, He's helping you. Facing the emptiness of your own ego with just your ego willpower, is going to fail. You have to invite God in to help you. And so if we distract ourselves a little bit, but then while loving God at the same time a little bit, God will come in a little bit, and you'll start to feel that. And then you can quiet yourself down even more. And if it's taking a walk, you can walk slower. You can stop looking around and just start looking at one point in space while you walk. And so then is like quiets the mind down more and more and gives you more capacity to focus on just loving God. And just one class isn't enough to really kind of describe this and get into it. It really takes practice, but it becomes a coaxing process where you can kind of feel like, okay, I'm trying to quiet myself down too fast. And you can actually feel, if you try to quiet yourself down too fast, you can feel the fear come up in you. In taking a walk or in meditation, if you try to force yourself into quietness at the beginning of meditation, maybe without doing chanting, without doing kriya, without doing hung sa, it's very difficult, if not impossible. And you can actually, I'm taking a walk, and if I try to quiet myself down too fast, I can feel the fear, and it manifests as maybe my blood pressure goes up a little bit, and maybe the heart starts pounding a little bit faster. And actually, that's very useful, because then I can modulate. I can use that as a cue. It's like, okay, I don't want to get too much fear because I know that'll just derail me. But at the same time, if I'm not really trying hard enough, then I'm not going to get anywhere. So you want to coax yourself into a state of still God communion, over some time, but without trying too hard, but trying hard enough. So there's a level in between where if you try too hard, the monkey mind is going to derail you and you won't be able to do it. And if you're not trying hard enough, then you're just going to plateau out and not go anywhere. And you can work with yourself over time, and you can learn to sense the cues in your own body, in your own heart and mind, as to whether if you're trying to push too hard or push too little. And you can kind of stay in that zone, and it's really remarkable, because once you can sense into that, it's very reliable and repeatable. And just over the course of like a 30-minute walk, you can just go from a state of distraction to a state of loving communion with God. And whereas I know in my own self, if I try too hard at the beginning, the rest of the walk is lost. And I can never, if I try too hard for the whole 30 minutes, I won't ever make it. I'll just end up being frustrated. Whereas if I just, for the first 5 or 10 minutes of a walk, I just let my mind go and just look all around, and then I start slowly going more and more still and more focused on loving God. By the end of it, I'll be in a very uplifted state. And so it's really interesting, trying too hard, it goes down there. Not trying hard enough, you just kind of flatline. Whereas trying just at the right level constantly, it goes up like this. Okay. Let's see. So that's kind of the coaxing, the joyful God remembrance. I apologize. One class really isn't enough to do this with. It really should be like a series, and it takes a while to practice something like this. I wrote a book on it. It's a preliminary book. It's available in the church boutique there for anyone that wants it. Yeah. And I used to give pre-COVID weekly walking meditation drop-ins, and I can start that again if people are interested in that. So just contact me. Because of COVID, that stopped. But if there is a real interest, and that's something that can start again, because it would probably take, like any new habit, if you're really trying to learn how to coax yourself into a still state from a state of distraction. It's probably like any new habit. It probably takes about a month to learn. A month. They say any new habit takes, a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks of doing it in repetition, till your mind starts to change, and then rather than fighting you, starts to help you with it. That happens with any exercise routine or anything. That it takes about a month of practice till your subconscious then, rather than trying to fight against it, turns and starts to help you do it. And I think it's the same with I'll call it a coaxing practice, where you just kind of, coax yourself into a state of God communion.
In that first
Yeah.
Allowing yourself to quiet down by distraction. I love that it's 60% is allowing the mind to be distracted in something else. I mean,
Right.
Are you doing the breathing then?
I'm doing the breathing, the love breathing, yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes I might not even be focused on God though. But I am feeling the energy in here and here, because that really does calm you down.
But it's not that you're more or less really just
Yeah.
using the others as keeping the mind away from monkey mind distractions.
Right. Away from thought trains that'll
Yeah.
take you away. Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this is I'll do that. Okay. Because it's interesting as you're willing, this happens in meditation too. Like at the end of a meditation, when you've done all the kriya and all the practices, and you're supposed to just sit in the silence and do whatever you want to do. That's the time when I still find if I try to then using my willpower totally suppress all thoughts, that I can sometimes feel the fear come up, even though I've gone through all this. It can still come up, and there, I'm not going to open my eyes and look around because I'm sitting in a silent meditation, a still meditation. But a good way that I find to kind of coax myself in that situation is just, pranayama, or just breathing. If I find it, if I'm at the end of the meditation and I'm trying to just totally silence, suppress all thoughts, and that brings up some fear in me, I'll just start breathing faster. And that really helps, and deeper. And maybe doing a hung sa breath. I won't necessarily say hung sa, but I'll just feel the energy go up and down with a hung sa breath, and just do it really fast. And let that be okay. For a while there, I fought against doing this. I'm at the end of my meditation, I should just be going into total stillness now and breathing really slow. But if the fear comes up, I said, okay, well, I'll just let myself breathe real fast.
Oh, interesting. Oh.
And it usually goes away quite quickly after I do that. But then, so I'll say that's a kind of a way to coax yourself too into more stillness. Is just you breathe a little faster for a bit and a little deeper for a while, and then let it go and let yourself go into more stillness and quietness as you're able to. And it's an interesting feeling. You feel kind of like fear and bliss at the same time. And Frank Laubach, I want to read a couple quotes, one from Frank Laubach and one from St. Teresa of Avila, that I think kind of really describe this state of quieting yourself down, opening yourself up to God when you're right on the edge of having it be more than you can handle. Frank Laubach writes, "It is my business to look into the very face of God until I ache with bliss." Facing, long we fear to face your love. Looking into the face of God can cause fear and bliss at the same time. And it can feel like it's aching. And I love this passage by St. Teresa of Avila. In her autobiography, she writes about an angel piercing her heart with a spear. And so it says, "In his hands I saw a golden spear with an iron tip at the end that appeared to be on fire. He plunged it into my heart several times, all the way to my entrails. When he drew it out, he seemed to draw them out as well, leaving me all on fire with love for God. The pain was so strong that it made me moan several times, and yet the sweetness of the pain was so surpassing that I couldn't possibly wish to be rid of it. My soul couldn't be content with anything but God. It wasn't a physical pain, but a spiritual one, pain which gave me a greater bliss than any created things could give me." simply quieting our mind to absolute zero can get us to that state. And with practice, that can become a regular occurrence. And it's something that can be induced to whatever level you're able to withstand that pain. And it's just a matter of quieting the mind down, letting yourself be okay with the fear, and as much as the fear you're able to contain and to hold on to be asking God, opening your heart to God, inviting Him in. And that's what, the path of devotion and devotional God remembrance can be. So I want to, I don't have my glasses on here, so I want to do a...
I think just realizing that the monkey mind, or my distraction thoughts, is fear.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's fear motivated.
yeah, I mean, I never thought of it that way, exactly.
Mm.
And I think that's going to really, really encourage me to work on this.
Okay.
This way. Yeah.
I wouldn't get angry at your monkey mind, though.
No.
Yeah, I would just
No,
say,
it's
oh,
just
thank you,
It's just a
thank you.
realization.
Yeah, yeah.
That, that's what, that it's a lot simpler. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Like how to
Really?
work with it.
Yeah.
How to work with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And I get this image of a flat field, and out in the middle of this field, there's a big cavern, empty cavern, that represents, down and below in the ground, and there's a little opening on top, and the cavern is, represents the emptiness of your ego. And on top of this, and at the entrance, on this hole in the ground at the entrance is the monkey mind guarding it. And I get an image, and at the bottom of this cavern, though, there's an oasis of God's joy.
Yeah.
And it's covered with mud and dirt, so the waters can't come out. And I'm, at the other end of the field, walking towards it. And the monkey mind, as soon as I get closer and closer, the monkey mind starts going more wild and wild, saying, no, danger, danger, danger. There's a big hole here. Get away, get away, get away. Go away, go away. Look over there, go have a hot dog or whatever, just go do the dishes or go do that, or just think about that awful, president on the other side of the world or whatever, do something else, but go away. But you just keep going towards it, and you get to the monkey mind and say, okay, monkey mind, here, let's look around. Look at all these beautiful sights around here. Okay, calm down here. I'm going into the hole, and I'm going to invite God into that hole. But before I jump into that hole, boy, I'm going to invite God to help me out, and to let God give you the rope to get down and give you the shovel, so that you can open up that oasis of overflowing joy that can then fill up the cavity of your ego, right? And so, and it's just, and the monkey mind, it's interesting because he's actually telling you where the hole is by trying to distract you. He's not very smart. If you're going throughout your day and all of a sudden you find your thoughts, going wild, and this happens to me, it's like, oh, hey, monkey mind, thank you for telling me where the hole is. Okay, let's quiet down and go into it. And so, rather than get upset like, oh, I just went off on all these tangents, think, oh, okay, well, thanks for the guidance. Yeah. So let's do an exercise now outside, and we're not going to do a regular meditation walk tonight because it's dark out, and I find walking on the streets at night too distracting because of all the street lights and the car lights and whatever. So we'll do something a little different. We'll do a devotional stroll in the courtyard, and we'll do it for about 15 minutes. And so you go out and just stroll around in the courtyard practicing love breathing with a little slight variation, is that God is in everything, and one of the ways to help maybe distract us and to help us in a coaxing process is to feel that God is everything you're looking at, and you're sharing love with God as everything you're looking at. And so when you go out into the courtyard, just kind of stroll around and maybe you see a leaf on a tree. Think, okay, God's that leaf. Share a couple love breaths with God as that leaf. And don't fixate on any one thing. You can stay with one thing for a long time, but then as soon as you find your mind getting distracted, go to something else. Okay, the God is the trunk of the tree. Feel like you're sharing love with God as the brick in the pavement. Or, God is, the chair or the table that's out there. Have fun with it. It's anything. And then also, guess what? God is each one of us. And so I will ask, in this 15 minutes when you're out there and just going from thing to, sharing love with God as all these different things. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's like 8 of us. So there's 7 other people. For a couple breaths, spend it on each one of us. And as you're kind of going by, saying, okay, I'm going to love God as Bhavani for a couple breaths, or May, or Jeffrey. And just, don't go stand up and look at people. That would be too odd, like when you're doing that. That might. But just in your mind, think, okay, I'm going to be sharing love with God as Atma Jyoti for like 2 or 3 breaths, and then move on to someone else or something else. And go about doing that and we'll do that for 15 minutes. And then what I find is with any of these walking meditations or meditation strolls, it can bring up a lot of energy. One of the great things about walking is that it allows you to coax yourself very easily. I find it's like the easiest thing for being able to coax yourself from a state of distraction to a state of stillness. Because at the beginning you can walk real fast and you can look around, and then as you go deeper and deeper you can walk slower and slower, and then look around less and less till you're looking at just one point. But the other great thing about walking is that it stimulates the energies in your body, and the energies in your spine, so that as you're walking and you're keeping your thoughts and you're keeping your focus uplifted, that energy just naturally rises up. And so that really helps you out. And so at the end of one of these things, you could end up in a very energetic, high energetic state. And you want to sit down and in a sitting meditation, it could just be 10 minutes or something afterwards, because that then internalizes it. Otherwise, it may kind of leave you feeling a little off balance. Now, I was at I think it was during Spiritual Renewal Week, they were doing a kirtan there once, and the kirtan leader said, it's very important after a kirtan to sit and meditate because it's going to bring up a lot of energies. And if you just do the kirtan, get all the energies raised, and then walk out, you're going to feel unbalanced. You want to sit and meditate first and to internalize all that energy. And it's the same with like a walking meditation, or what we'll do here is a walking stroll. So, for 15 minutes, go out, do call it a devotional stroll, and then come back in, and I'll clap my hands when it's done or something, but then just come back in and in silence, just sit with your eyes closed, and we'll meditate for 10 minutes and then have a wrap up. Okay? So,
Review the technique again.
okay. You breathe in. Feel like God is just filling your heart with love energy. And when you breathe out, feel like from the spiritual eye point, you're loving God. And the thing that I find that's helpful is as I'm breathing out, I just mentally chant God. So it's like, God, God. And then I just ask, when we're out there, just whatever you're looking at, feel that is God. And so you're sharing, and you could, one thing that helps, I used to do this, I don't do it now, but, when I was looking up, I would feel, when I was breathing in, I'd feel God is up there in the sky and sending me a beam of love into my heart. And then when I'm breathing out, I'm feeling like I'm sending a beam of love back to God. And you can do that out there, like if you're looking at a tree trunk, you can feel like the tree trunk is sending you a beam of love on the in-breath, and you're sending a beam of love back on the out-breath. That's a visualization that I think can help quiet the mind. It's like part of a coaxing process. And as you get deeper and deeper into it, you might want to just you can try that, but let it go, because it can become a distraction also from feeling a deep devotion too. So you want to do things that help move you into deeper devotion. And any technique can help that, but after a while the technique can actually become a distraction. In that case, you want to let it go and go deeper. Is that any other questions or comments? Or? Okay. I'm going to wear my jacket. Yeah, it's cold out. And I do need this. Peace. Amen. So how was that for everybody? Anybody?
I was just gonna say, wow.
Oh, okay. What was?
I'm used to walking and receiving love and sending love. But this was different.
How so?
My usual practice. I guess doing it more conscientiously and involving people. I don't usually involve people in that.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
even the strangers that were out on the street when I decided to go outside.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
So just a real opening of my heart.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. Anybody want to share?
I think that was powerful also. I began loving everything, the rocks and the trees, and everything seemed so loving, and I felt so much love for God.
Okay.
And the people, it was very nice walking by and just loving the whole lot. We should do that.
Yeah.
It was a good idea.
I did have a little handout too. It's just kind of a suggested way to use this for praying for people or nations or the world today. Just as you're going through just your day-to-day life. It's just pretty much what we did is just, when you breathe in, you feel God filling your own heart. But then when you breathe out, feel like you and God at your spiritual eye point are loving the person you're praying for, the nation you're praying for, or whatever you're praying for. And that's just a simple thing you can do going through the day. And bringing the love into your heart first, though, is really critical, because you have to be in a state of love and communion with God to be a transmitter of God's love. So if you focus on the in-breath on just God, loving your own heart, and then as you're breathing out, you feel like God and you together are loving the person or the world or the section of the world. Yeah, yeah. And that's just something you can do. A lot of times when I'm standing in line, I'll just do that with the cashier or something. It's just, just silently, just feel like you're just praying for the people you see silently as you go by. Yeah. And, or something you can just do while driving, thinking about, I guess I will share this. I mean, this was many years ago, but I was driving back from the village, and I just got this inspiration I needed to pray for my son. And so I spent 2 hours just doing this prayer, you know, for my son. And it was very powerful. It was like Master was praying through me. And it's just like I was almost compelled to do this. And a couple months later, he went through a very troubling time in his life. He almost didn't graduate from high school. So, and I thought, oh, okay, well, that's what that was about, to help him out there. And he made it through, and you know, he's getting his PhD now. But that's so, but he almost didn't graduate in the last month. So yeah.
It was your prayer that got him on the way.
It was God, God helping, yeah. But yeah, it can be just a wonderful way, and then you feel uplifted, because you have the heart and the spiritual eye engaged. Yeah.
And I did find it very helpful that, you know, you're first getting in the love and then bring it out.
Right. Because sometimes if you're just trying to send love yourself,
Yeah.
you're just trying to send love yourself. You've got to get, you want to be sending God's love, yeah.
So when you're praying for your son, you were bringing in God's love and then sending out.
I was feeling him right there, and God and I were just loving him. Yeah, right there. Yeah. Just for like a couple hours straight, just driving down the road. Yeah.
I think I'll go to the village.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for sharing.
Okay. Yeah. So, any other comments, questions, or?
Maybe just a feeling.
Yeah.
So just to share
Oh, okay.
a kind
Yeah.
of feeling I have
Yeah.
after this practice. So one
Yeah.
of my favorite quotes from Zhongmir,
What?
one naturalist, is I took a walk in the woods and I came out taller than the trees. So I think this experience somehow made me feel the same.
Oh.
So normally at hiking or out of hiking, I have this expansive
Mm.
feeling,
Yeah.
but it's normally in the nature environment.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah.
have not applied it to this environment, out of nature. But now I think I have the tool to do this every day or no matter where I am.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I
What are you
can
gonna say?
relate to that too. I was reflecting like how spontaneously I'll do that throughout my day without, I didn't realize that's what I was doing. It's a little different, but
Mm.
just like feeling that love of God and then seeing God in everything and in nature and looking around in the community or, you know, out. It's easier in nature.
Yeah. That's,
And
yeah.
when
Yeah.
the sounds are, for me, when like the traffic I found very distracting.
Right. Yeah.
And when we were practicing at the beginning, I found it difficult to just focus on the breathing and feeling the love and then sending it out for the spiritual eye. But then I realized it was like partly because of the lights and I didn't quite know what to look at.
Mm.
And then I started feeling God in the lights
Mm.
and in the
Okay.
wall. and then it was very powerful. It completely shifted and my mind got calm and my heart got calmer. So then doing that outside was also most powerful for me, like to bring in that expansion of seeing God in everything and feeling sort of like trying to bring, it reminded me of in meditation how we don't want to just wait for joy, we want to meditate with joy or with love. And so like finding how to bring that deeper into this practice for me was that sense of focusing on seeing God in everything. So I found that very powerful. And it was really beautiful to feel feel that in each person as we walked by each other. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting with this practice for myself. I actually find I love doing it in nature, and it's easier to get into it when in nature, like at the farm or something, or hiking. But I can actually go deeper into it just on the streets, on Monroe Drive, or whatever. And actually, because when I'm in nature, I love it so much. My focus stays outward. I'm seeing God in everything that I'm looking at because I love nature so much. Whereas if I'm on the streets, on the sidewalk or something, I'll end up just loving God, internally. And in some ways, I can actually go deeper that way, and just, walking back and forth in the parking lot in the community or something. So, yeah. But it's harder to get into it. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments, questions, or?
I have just always thought of like in nature, when you, but I had never thought of when you're just walking on the side street.
Oh.
So now there's another tool.
You can have fun with it, I would be walking the street and say, "Oh, God's that piece of gum squished on the ground." How do you like being down there? Why did you choose to do that? Just let yourself have fun with it. Or he's the O in the stop sign or something, and just like, okay, just be you can be silly with it.
I actually got startled out there. The light had shone from a car that was passing, and it flashed on the bushes next to me, and I thought it was something like big out there in the bush, and I started jumped, and I just immediately realized what it was, and I laughed with
No.
God,
Yeah.
thinking, oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I find it's very interesting you talk about vigil takes up 60% of your brain capacity. That actually helps you to calm your mind.
Right. Yeah.
So that makes me think about using my other senses,
Mm,
not
yeah.
only looking, but
Yeah.
I found sometimes, for example, in nature, I smell the trees
Yeah.
or the flowers or the air.
Yeah.
That also helps me to, because that also takes capacity from my mind.
Right.
And
Yeah.
when I touch the tree trunk, for
Yeah.
example, that
Teaching.
also takes capacity. So
Yeah.
then maybe I don't have capacity to think.
Yep. And that's why something like knitting is, I think somewhere Yogananda said, it was about one of his relatives, that knitting is a good way to practice, is a good activity to practice devotion in, because you're just it doesn't take a lot of thought, but then you're just going and your hands are moving, and
Next time we
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
I was really surprised at how not distracted I was
Mm.
this time,
Mm.
because of what you presented tonight. It truly, the idea that one of the reasons my mind wanders and
Right.
gets involved in things
Yeah.
other than God,
Yeah.
meditating, is because I have a fear. There's
Yeah.
it's related to fear and something. So I just said, that's over.
Mm.
I just,
Okay.
I mean, for tonight.
For tonight. No, well, you'll have to give a class on how to get it over.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
what do you think about practicing and listening to Om while practicing? That's
Yeah, I've tried that, because, I think I wrote about it and experienced my book when I was just first starting these walks. I just tried a lot of different things, and, listening to music, chanting, and it was one of them. Listening. Everybody's got to find their own way to love God. And if that works, by gosh, go with it, go deep. And for me, it was something that would help out initially, but then after a while, it's just, I really wanted to go into the silence. I love this quote that Yogananda, it's the only one I have posted in my house. It's, freedom comes by tuning oneself deeply to the all-loving inner silence. And that's kind of that, to me, that's, it's interesting, some people talk about talking to God throughout the day. I'll think about God a lot during the day, and I'll try to talk to him, but I can't. I just go from thinking about him to trying to love him in silence. You know, I'm not a conversationalist, I guess. So I'm much of a conversationalist, but so we've all got to find what works. Yeah.